Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. This is a horror podcast, so we could potentially talk about dark things, but with levity, as I make a joke out of it. Now, it's we could talk about certain subjects such as child abuse, F-bombs, R-bombs, bad things.
So if you're not into that, come back later.
Yeah. And with that very perfectly executed intro out of the way, Steve, what's going on? What do we got coming up?
Still got about 10 people on the guest list, so we won't go through that. We are doing listen parties on Discord every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and Chris also does a drawing party where he live streams himself working on his horror-themed webcomic pieces, which you can find out more at piecesofflesh.com. We've also got my book, A Guide to the Recovery Toolbox, available on Amazon. There's links to all that on our website, which Chris already just mentioned, horrormakesushappy.com. But today we are talking to Mr. John Fallon, director, writer, actor, best known for his work on Saw 2, The Shelter, and Dead Shadows. Also Air on the Head over at joeblow.com. Welcome, John.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Before we get into the meat of the interview, you want to let us know what you're currently working on?
Well, I have my new film, Malicious, which is a home invasion with a twist, or 2 or 3 twists. Film that's right now out pretty much everywhere, like your Tubies, Google Play, YouTube, iTunes, the usual suspects, Amazon Prime, obviously. So everybody listening, check it out. Fairly proud of the film. It was my second feature as a director, and also co-writer and producer, and I'm also an actor in it, and I also did some cooking on the side. But that's
I was just about to say, did you do catering too?
Exactly. That's
many hats. That's how you get it done. Many hats.
That's how you get it done in the indie world, you know. So check it out, Malicious, starring Kevin Tornado. Proud of it, and I hope people enjoy it. And outside of that, I'm, of course, the top dog on Joe Blow Horror Originals, which is a YouTube channel, which is all about horror, with my man, Lance Velchek. And we do a lot of reviews, interviews, behind the scenes, a lot of making ofs, actually. And we had a series called 80s Horror Memories that just ended. We had 50 episodes of that series looking back at, of course, the creme de la creme of horror, which was the 80s, that decade. So we
really
not
was
only...
the heyday.
It was the heyday. And that's why, I'm not going to get into it too much, but that's why right now everybody wants to go back, because today's time sucks. But, the 80s was a simpler time.
Yeah.
All that to say, check out 80s Horror Memories on Joe Blow Horror Originals. It was a labor of love by my crew and myself. And if you love the 80s and you love horror, you're in for a treat.
Cool.
I think I will be checking out both this and Malicious tonight. Malicious looks
Thank you.
From the
that's all right. It's all right, man.
And the images.
Director is a bit of a bitch, but it's okay.
I heard about that guy.
Yeah, I heard too, yeah.
So it's been a little while since we initially talked about this, because we did have to reschedule once, but the general theme of the interview, we talked more about your love for the genre as a fan from childhood through adulthood, and then talk about whatever topics that brings up. But that said, it's not meant to be like a therapy session, so if there's anything that we ask that you don't want to say, just pass and we'll move on.
That's fine.
Starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
You mean in terms of films or in terms of my upbringing?
In terms of any kind of memories, influences, if you'd seen a film, if you, had a weird, spooky experience.
The first horror film I ever saw was The Evil Dead, the original Evil Dead by Sam Raimi. And I was not allowed to watch it, but thankfully I went for a weekend at a cabin in the woods. I'm not fucking around. With my best friend at that time, and his mom let us watch The Evil Dead. And it scared the living bejesus out of me. and I wound up sleeping on the floor of my friend's room because I was so petrified. And that actually launched my fascination and love for horror. And the follow-up to that was Nightmare on Elm Street, the original 1984.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure I speak for a lot of people listening, but the whole thing with horror when you're a child is, well, when you're a child of the 80s, which I was the taboo factor. So, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street came out. Everybody's talking about it. A little movie that could. And, you know, my mom, my dad, you're not allowed to watch it. You're not allowed to watch it. And I wound up being babysat by my aunt. And she said, "Oh, you want to watch Nightmare on Elm Street? Here you go. Wait till you see the part. Wait till you see the part
with the Exorcist."
Exactly, with the phone and the tongue. You know, I'm like, wow. Yeah. So we watched that, and so basically, The Evil Dead exposed me to horror for the first time, and Nightmare on Elm Street 1984 solidified my love for horror. And after that, I was hooked.
Cool. Okay. You mentioned the tongue and the phone. Would you have a standout memory from Evil Dead?
My God, there's so many. A lot of the claymation stuff freaked me out at the time. You know, when their face started decomposing.
Stuff like
exactly.
The veins.
Yeah. When the girl is sitting down, "You're all gonna die," you know, doing like a nursery rhyme kind of thing, with her white eyes, and which was very freaky at the time. No, just the movie overall just traumatized me. But you know, I was young, so thank you, Sam Raimi. Thank you.
Right.
Well, what are you doing the work that you do today? So yeah,
exactly.
It's a blessing and a curse.
Nah, just a blessing. It's okay. You know, I was traumatized enough by real life, so when I was traumatized by horror movies, I'm like, it's all good.
Yeah. Was there anybody in your family who was a fan of horror? Maybe around?
My aunt was, yeah. My aunt that exposed me to Nightmare on Elm Street. She was a fan of horror. That was pretty much it. Nobody really gave a shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
That happens.
Did you participate in Halloween as a kid?
Yes, I did.
Favorite costume?
Man, I'm the kind of person that, unfortunately or fortunately, all depending how you look at it, I've blocked a lot of my childhood memories. I think I was C-3PO once. I kind of remember my 20s and upwards. So in my 20s, I was the Crow, or, you know, I was Jason. Jason has been a go-to for me a lot, you know, because easy costume. But as a child, I remember C-3PO, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. Would it be easier if I flip it around and say, do you remember a least favorite costume?
No, it won't.
Okay.
Was the C-3PO costume one of those Ben Cooper masks where you just had like the plastic mask and then the shirt? Yep. It's a picture of C-3PO. Yeah.
That's pretty much it. That's pretty much it, dude. Good memory.
Yeah. We went through like, I don't know, 5 or so interviews where those kept coming up as least favorite costume. And finally we just decided to, like, you know, talk about it. Be like, okay, we're going to Google this. What exactly are these costumes called? Because we had so many names for them, like the terrible plastic mask costumes. It was Ben Cooper costumes, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Did you have any scary dreams as a kid or recurring nightmares?
I do feel like I'm in a therapy session now. Oh, I had a lot of stuff as a kid, actually. I had night terrors, you know, when your body freezes up and you think you're awake, maybe you're not. I mean, to this day, scientists haven't nailed down what the hell's going on with that. Right. But then, you know, people appear and stuff like that. So I had a lot of that, especially 16, 17 kind of stuff. So I had a lot of night terrors, a lot of weird shit. Like I personally believe in ghosts because I've seen shit happen wide awake with my own eyes that I cannot logically explain.
And that was when you were a kid or as an adult?
I would say like 15, 16, 17, 18. So
okay.
Kid slash adult. Yeah.
Let me make a note to come back to that teenage side.
I'm sure you will. Yeah.
So you kind of touched on this briefly, and don't want to dig into it too much if you don't want to, but just to you know, what do you feel like sharing in terms of like having scary stuff happen in real life as a kid?
You're talking about supernatural or real stuff?
Anything, whatever you feel like sharing. I mean, I'll give you an example. One of our other guests had talked about, you know, he had a wooded lot in the backyard and he wound up getting lost back there for a while. Like, okay. Did you have anything like that happen, or was it?
No, not really. No, I used to say when I was younger, I don't know if you guys remember the show. It was called After School Special. You remember that?
Yeah.
So it was a show, and basically that would chronicle like pretty much everything that could go wrong, whether it's, abuse, physical abuse, drugs, and so forth and so forth and so forth. So, and I really don't want to get into it, but I will say I had an after-school special upbringing, which was very difficult. And yeah, I'm not going to go into that. But in terms of, supernatural stuff, yeah, I don't mind sharing a story if you want to hear one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I had a lot of night terrors when I was a child. 16, 17 or whatever. And very long story short, my body would freeze and figures would show up and come and have convos with me. So it got to a point where it was very disruptive to my life. So I went to my mom and we sat on the kitchen table, and I addressed it with her. And of course, my mom's first reaction is, I need therapy. I got issues. I got problems and everything like that. But at some point, I was telling my mom, I'm like, look, I'm telling you, there's like ghosts, there's like some weird stuff. And the chandelier above the kitchen table started to tremble. Like tremble by itself, And then it kind of escalated. It trembled more and more and more until like the whole thing is being shooken as if, just like 5 big dudes are shaking it or some shit, So I look at my mom and I point at the chandeliers. I'm like, you see, there's something wrong here. And she's like, no, that's somebody, doing the vacuum upstairs or whatever. And I'm like, I don't hear no vacuum. So anyways, I extended my hand. Yeah, exactly. I extended my hand and I went to touch the chandelier, and like when I was inches away from it, boom, it stopped. But my mom is, the kind of person that's not very open-minded to these kind of things. So she, it's a vacuum, but it was not a vacuum. I've seen doors shut by themselves. I've seen, you guys know, like hockey tables when you go to arcades and you play like hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had one. And one day I'm hearing the hockey table playing, because there's like sound effects on it, and it's a goal and, stuff like that. So I go downstairs to my basement, and the hockey table was playing by itself. So when you see that, you're not asleep, you're not 2 years old, you're like 16, 17, you see it. There's a game, and both sides are playing by themselves, passing the puck, scoring. You kind of start believing in stuff, yeah.
Interesting. I thought you were going to say something about, how can I say this? The difference I was having the electronics going off or whatever. But when you say passing the puck, that's another level.
Oh yeah, no, and really, and I'm, we could do a whole show about this, but I'd rather not, to be honest. But I have stories. So I believe in ghosts. I believe there's something else because I've seen it so many times. Even some of my friends who were very cynical, kind of like a Scully to a Mulder. And then, like I'm talking with them in the kitchen. This has happened to me. I'm talking to them in the kitchen to one of my best friends who's very cynical, doesn't believe in anything. And at some point I'm like, oh, fuck. He's like, what the hell? And I lift up my shirt and there's this huge cut and it's bleeding. It's like somebody just came and slashed me. And he's like, what the fuck? How the fuck that happened? I'm like, I don't know. So, there's a lot of weird stuff that's happened to me in my life. Yes. We'll leave it at that.
I hate to tell you, but I think you might have a poltergeist and you should move.
The poltergeist might be hanging on my shoulders, and wherever I move, it follows. You never know.
Yeah, they are prone to tend to follow people.
Kind of like that movie Shudder.
Yeah.
The original, yeah. Not the remake.
So when we ask about, the bad things that potentially happen with guests in childhood, we also try to, again, flip it around and ask the opposite there and ask, was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
No.
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry, no.
Okay.
Yeah, that kicked in when, college and stuff like that. But no, my childhood was never calm or at bliss or anything like that. No.
All right. Another pair of questions, again, starting with the negative, so we can end on the positive. Do you remember the first person you hurt?
The first person I hurt, physically or emotionally?
Either one.
Either or.
Damn. You guys go far. And like I said before, I made a point unconsciously to block pretty much my whole childhood. Okay. So it's going to be difficult. The first person I hurt emotionally, probably my brother, actually, my little brother.
Yeah.
that's not uncommon. We've had a couple different guests mention
sibling rivalry.
Yeah, sibling rivalry.
Well, it's projection, you know. So let's say you're 12 years old and hypothetically your dad beats you, and then you have a 10-year-old brother. What are you going to do? You're going to beat him. You know, it's a projection tool.
So again, flipping that one around, do you remember the first person you helped?
My mother.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that was it for the childhood questions. Oh,
thank God.
One of the
damn boys, it's early in the morning here, man. Come on, guys.
Are you in Cali?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
One other question we sometimes ask during the childhood section is: so some of our guests have reported that, like, there was a dividing line in their childhood where before that dividing line, horror was scary to them, and then after that dividing line, it was exciting or fun to them. Was there? You mentioned that you had seen Evil Dead and that you kind of enjoyed that. Was there something before that scared you, or was that like your first introduction to the genre?
No, Evil Dead, to my recollection, was my first legit intro to the genre. I'm pretty sure I've seen like a Lugosi Dracula before or something like that, but it didn't really have the impact that Evil Dead did. Right. And, you know, and it says, you know, like you said, it scares you, but you kind of enjoy it. You know, Evil Dead scared me to the fact, like I said before, I'm sleeping on my friend's floor. But yet, after the Evil Dead, I went and started to seek out more horror movies. So, you know, I think it was a mix of the two things. You know, yeah, it scared the shit out of me, but at the same time, it's somewhat cathartic, and I kind of enjoy it. So, might as well, you know, explore it.
Yeah, you kind of touched on that when you brought it up originally. Like it was, it scared the shit out of you to where you were sleeping on the floor earlier, and but then afterwards you just kind of had that interest from it, I guess.
Yeah,
did
a fascination.
The initial fear spark the interest because it was like, I don't know, an adrenaline thing, or maybe just a fascination.
So with the teenage years, what are some of the stuff that kind of stood out to you in terms of the genre there, whether it's books or stories or movies or experiences?
Oh my God. There's so much.
Now we're getting into the 80s. That's when the good stuff happened.
Yeah. No, there's so much. I mean, you know, in my days, they had a thing called a library. Mm-hmm. And I would go to it all the time, you know, and take out Stephen King books, Kuhn's books, you know, witchcraft, you know. So after the Evil Dead, I really became fascinated with the macabre and the horror, not just in terms of film, just in general.
Yeah, like actual witchcraft and macabre books, like
exactly
Ars Goetia and things like that.
Yeah. So I read a lot of books. I read a lot and I watched a lot of movies. And, you know, I mean, I don't know how old you guys are, but for me, one of my best memories is going to the video store and looking at box covers, whether it be, what was it called? The Dead Pit, you know, with the zombie, and you press the button and its light glowed. Or, you know, The Wraith with, you know, Charlie Sheen and Sherilyn Fenn. Awful cover, but good fun movie.
Yeah.
So for me, yeah, the video store was my refuge in life. I actually, when I was in high school, I befriended the guy that owned the video store in front of my high school. So every lunch, I would go to the video store and we'd just talk about movies. He'd give me posters, stuff like that. So I was kind of like raised, you know, 16, 17, 18, 19, so forth, in a video store. Cool.
You mentioned The Wraith. What did you like about that one?
The car. The soundtrack. It's basically The Crow before The Crow, really.
Like The Crow meets Knight Rider?
Yeah, to some degree. Yeah, no, it's a unique film. It's actually, you know, like if you watch The Crow and you watch The Wraith back to back, you see a lot of similarities. It was just a film I never heard of. I just, you know, the box showed up at the video store. Oh, it's Charlie Sheen. Oh, it's the girl from Twin Peaks. So, you know, I rented it, and, you know, it has flaws. It's not a perfect film by any means, but no, I like it. It's pretty good.
For the books, like, what are the first one or two that come to mind?
Graveyard Shift by King. I did a lot of King, like early King. I pretty much did them all, to be honest. Not Graveyard Shift, actually. Night Shift. Sorry, my mistake. Yeah, Night Shift, right? The anthology book that he wrote. Graveyard Shift was one of the stories, but Night Shift was the book.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Pet Cemetery, the book,
Right.
really marked me, really traumatized me.
How so?
Well, I mean, in terms of the subject matter, with a kid coming back, it kind of crossed lines you didn't see being crossed very often. I'm sure you guys know, you guys are horror fans. I mean, Pet Cemetery for a very long time was considered the book that cannot be filmed.
Yeah.
And finally, after Romero had a shot at it, but eventually Mary Lambert, got it, and she, in my opinion, anyways, of course, I have issues with the film, but overall, I think it did a really fantastic job in adapting that book, which so many called unadaptable for a long time.
What did you like about Night Shift?
Was it Night Shift or was it Graveyard Shift?
You tell me.
I believe we settled on Night Shift was the name of the book series, and Graveyard Shift was one of the short stories.
Yeah.
I don't remember, to be honest. I'm not, I got hooked on King. That's really what happened, between The Stand, Pet Cemetery, Christine, Carrie, Night Shift.
Those are long books.
And they had what was the name of the book with the monkey, with the symbols? Skeleton Crew.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, Skeleton Crew was one of my favorite books at that time, yeah.
What'd you like about it?
I don't remember. It was just one of my favorite books at that time. I can't even tell you one story that's in it. Wait a minute. No, I do. Creepshow 2 had a story, The Raft. Remember with that black goo in
we were
the
just
lake?
talking about this the other day, yeah.
Really? And that was in Skeleton Crew, if I remember correctly. That story was in Skeleton Crew.
Okay.
So you remember the story, but do you remember what you liked about it?
Yeah, it's scary.
Okay.
No, it freaked me out. It freaked me out. And even actually the little segment they did on Creepshow 2, which I was kind of like uneven about. It's my favorite bit of that anthology is that segment, The Raft.
They really did a good job with the practicals on the tar effect.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's nothing in general or nothing specific about it that scared you. It was just more of a general thing.
Yeah, like I said before, I've blocked off a lot.
Okay, I didn't know if that was included in what you had blocked out.
Yeah, no. I've literally all in, not consciously, obviously, it's just how life went about. Under 20 is very hard for me to remember much, like in terms of details. So no, I don't remember Skeleton Crew. I like the cover. You had the monkey with the symbols, which of course reminds me of Romero's Monkey Shines.
I was about to say, I thought that was Monkey Shines. Did they both have the same cover?
Yeah, they have the similar motif, the monkey with the symbols. But to my memory, and to all the horror fans out there, correct me if I'm wrong, Monkey Shines has absolutely nothing to do with Skeleton Crew.
I don't believe it does.
They're just a similar iconography, if you will.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you don't remember favorite or least favorite costumes for Halloween in your teens.
The Crow was, well, I wasn't in my teens, I was in my 20s, but
right.
The Crow, like I said before, The Crow was a big one for me, and Jason Voorhees. I've also dressed up as Michael Myers, and I never did Freddy, because the masks were always shit.
Yeah. It's either go all out and do the makeup yourself, or get a mask and
exactly.
They're never really very good.
But Jason is to this day, as a quote unquote grown man, I like to dress up as Jason because Jason's always been kind of like a favorite of mine.
Any time in your teens when you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
No.
Okay.
Teens are a hectic time.
Yeah, no. I came out of the womb and it was bullshit up until. No, I'm not kidding. No, up until I decided, I've always said this, and of course, I have younger friends, or I have people that are younger that look up to me and they talk to me, and I always say the same thing. They've had rough upbringings and whatnot. Is that for a period of time, you are not in control of what happens to you. Mm-hmm. But at a certain point in time, you do have the opportunity to take control. So let's say hypothetically, you went through child abuse or sexual abuse or verbal abuse, emotional abuse. And when you're a child and up to a certain point, you have no choice. This shit's being tagged on you, and you kind of, go into survival mode and find a way to navigate through it to be a productive member of society. But then at a certain point, especially when you move out from your parents' house, if that's where the abuse is coming from, then it's on you. If you are aware that your upbringing was difficult, go get help. Your life becomes in your control at around like 20, I would say 19, 20. Your life becomes your responsibility now. And it's up to you to go fix everything that was broken and move upwards and forward. And, I think, like on paper, I'm a guy that should have wound up in jail, but I didn't, because I decided to take control of my own life and okay, that's broken, go fix it. Now, okay, this is what you want to achieve, go achieve it. And that's it. Yeah.
It's funny that you brought that up because I was going to bring up something similar, whether you had or not, and share that, in my teens, I obviously unsuccessfully attempted suicide. And the one thing that my stepmother did that was halfway decent was that she talked my father into sending me to a counselor for a couple months because he did have insurance through the job that he was working at the time. And we did a couple like group sessions with a counselor, and that fizzled out real quick, but they let me continue seeing a counselor one-on-one for a couple months. And probably after about 6 months, the counselor finally sat me down and was like, you guys, he told me basically I had a couple things that I needed to work out, but I have now managed to work them out and I'm good. There are problems in the family, but we can't do anything about those because your parents don't want to come in and work on those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you're not that fucked up. You kind of have a decent head on your shoulders. There's really nothing you can do about your family. The only thing you can do is just wait until you're 18 and move out. And that was really like, I can't tell you how justifying and like a huge weight off of my shoulders that was, because I mean, I didn't know this at the time. It wasn't something I learned until much later, but one thing I like now is I've heard the phrase that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And at the time, I didn't realize that it was a temporary problem. I thought I'm fucked up. My family's fucked up. It's always going to be like this. My life is going to suck. Nothing's ever going to get better. And having this experience of going to this counselor for a couple months helped me understand that, no, I'm not that fucked up. It's my family that's fucked up. And I'm right because I can see it. And I am going to have to wait until I'm 18 to move out. But like you said, at a certain point, you do gain some control over your life and you can make things better. And so there is that moment of, okay, I might have to put up with this shit for a certain amount of time, but I just got to get through it, do what I got to do to get through it, survive it, and then come out on the other side and do what I got to do.
It's not confusing. I'll use a big word here. The trauma that people has put on you. Do not confuse the trauma that people have put on you that was outside of your control with who you are, like at the core. So, for me personally, trauma, I mean, forget about it. It was a fucking all-you-can-eat buffet. Okay, it was trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. So then next thing you know, you're 15, 16, 17, you're fucking violent, you're cutting your arm or whatever. These are all things I've done. You're fucked up in the head. Is that who you are? No, that is not who you are at the core. Well, for me, it was not. It is a response to the trauma I was subjected to. But at some point when maturity kicks in and self-awareness kicks in, and I know it doesn't for many people, but thankfully for me it did, then I'm like, okay, what's the fucking problem? Mm-hmm. That. Are these from you? No, they're from other people. Okay, go fix them. And that is from you. Okay, go fix that too. And that's it. So at this point, we can be victims till the day we die, or we can choose to not be and take our lives into our own hands. And, I'm a great example. I grew up poor. I had a really shitty fucking family. Love you, Mom and Dad. But, I had a really shitty upbringing. And on paper, I should be in jail, like I said before, or this or that or that. What did I do? I took charge. Next thing you know, I'm at Playboy parties. Next thing you know, I'm making movies. Next thing you know, I'm in Saw 2. Okay, on paper, that should not have happened. But why did it happen? Because at some point, I have the self-awareness, self-honesty, and the strength to say, okay, fuck you. That's what you tagged on me. I'm going to fix that shit. And now I'm going to go and create my own life, my life, not your life, my life.
Is that something that you came to on your own, or was there somebody that in your life that helped you see that?
On my own.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's impressive, actually. I mean, in my case, it was a high school counselor. I remember going and sitting in the counselor's office at one point and just being really bummed out. And I had said to the lady that, I remember feeling like I was always going to be broken. And she said, I don't think that's the case. And I asked her why. And she said, in my experience, it's the kids who can tell that there's something wrong that can fix it. Because if you can't see that there's a problem, you don't know that anything needs to be fixed.
Exactly.
And having that external view point that out to me is kind of what made me kind of pick my head up and realize, all right, so there is hope here. And between that and the other thing that I already shared, it was those two things that really made me realize, okay, I'm going to be able to get some control of this at some point and do something to make my life better. And I remember thinking to myself that I knew that my life was going to get better as I got older, because it certainly couldn't get any fucking worse. Kind of say that jokingly. I'm sure it could have been worse. I'm not the worst off. I didn't have the worst off childhood as some people have, but wasn't the best either. So, having an opportunity to make my adult life better was a good thing to look forward to. And it's cool, like I said, that you were able to come to that on your own.
Actually, you know what? Now thinking about it, I have to give credit where credit is due. It was not fully on my own in the sense that I saw Rocky at a very young age.
Okay.
At the right time, I saw Rocky at the right time. And Rocky is about what? Is about a guy who's, nobody. He's a loser. He's
a bum.
He's a bum, and life gives him a shot, and he takes it and he gives it everything he has. And at the end, he doesn't win, but he does win, over himself and the expectations that people had of him. And after I saw Rocky, I became very fascinated with Sylvester Stallone, the actor. And I, realized that his life story was the same as Rocky. He came from Hell's Kitchen, New York, was born with half his face paralyzed. He had no money. You guys all know the Rocky story, so I'm not getting eternalized on it. $100 to his name, blah, 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 And now he's, to this day, one of the biggest cinematic icons we ever had. So when I discovered Stallone and then discovered his backstory, he became the male role model that my dad could not be. Mm-hmm. So I truly fixed it. I started training because of Stallone. I started boxing because of Stallone. I started believing I could write, direct, act, produce because of Stallone. And these are all things I've done. So Sylvester Stallone was a huge inspiration for me. And I'm sure a lot of people can say this. I kind of latched onto him as a male example. I want to be like this dude. And I did everything I could to be like that dude. I went to film school. I went to acting school. I came out. I auditioned. I started acting. Acting wasn't enough. I started writing. I had a side job as script doctor. I was really good at dialogues. I would fix like studios dialogues and shit. And then I'm like, well, I want to fucking direct. And to direct, I had to learn to fucking produce. So I learned to produce, and then I eventually directed The Shelter with Michael Pare, and then now I directed Malicious. So none of it would have happened without Sylvester Stallone's inspiration in my solar system. Very
cool. Yeah. You've probably already heard this before, but for listeners who may not have, it is also a good example of what something I heard said about Billy Bob Thornton, who kind of went through a similar situation. And what I had heard at that point was that there are people who are good character actors, and if you're having trouble making your way in Hollywood, basically the best way to handle that situation is you've got to write your own movie that you are then going to be playing a role in, because that's you've got to come to the table prepared to say, this is who I am, this is the role that I can play, this is the part I'm going to fill. And then if you can make that happen and show the rest of the world that you've got something there, then then things start to happen.
Yeah.
And that's Rocky is kind of a similar situation.
Definitely. No, you take your life and you take your career in your own hands, and you take chances, you take shots, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But at the end of the day, what matters is that you took the shot. Yeah. Because if you don't take the shot, then you're not provoking life. You're not throwing the dart at the board and hoping to hit the bullseye. You're not doing nothing. So take the shot, and even if you fail, and this is Rocky that taught me that. Even if you fail, you succeed because at least you had the balls to take the shot.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky.
Nice. Great man.
100% of the shots you don't take, you miss.
Exactly. There you go.
So adult tears. You had mentioned going into film school and doing some stuff there. It's kind of similar to something you said about the 80s. There being a lot of different stuff that you could pick to say that you liked. Talking about your adult years, like if you were to pick just like the first couple things that come to mind, what would be the first that come to mind? Like
positive things, you mean?
Yeah, horror movies, books, stories, whatever.
For me, what happened was I was delayed because of my upbringing. I was delayed like a good 10 years. Where people going to prom, I was too insecure or this or that to go to prom. Where guys were picking up chicks and dating and stuff, I was too my self-esteem was too low and insecure and whatever. So it took me an extra 10 years to kind of catch up to everybody. But once I did, I went for the gold. And my 20s and upwards, I've traveled the world. Like I've said before, I've been to Playboy parties, I've been to red carpets, I've been to premieres, I've directed. I've done so much. And I'll thank my upbringing for that. I became obsessed with catching up on lost time. So I didn't live my life as much as I should have when I was younger. But now that I'm in control, I'm going to go for the gold. And I did. So, of course, like everybody else, my adult years, didn't come without challenges or difficulties. But on the whole, I had a great life. I could die right now and say I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah. I can relate to that as well. I didn't even get an associate's until I was 30 because of some poor life advice that I had gotten earlier, which is a topic we don't need to get into.
It's all good, bro.
But in terms of media, movies or books or stories, like what in the horror genre, what has really stood out to you as impactful?
Oh, man. The Crow, the original by Alex Proyas.
Coming.
Yep. You knew it, eh? You know me well.
Well, you mentioned it a few times.
Yeah, no, The Crow is, I think, like when I saw The Crow when it came out in theaters, nice. And my jaw dropped in terms of the ideal marriage of visuals, music, emotional resonance. It is just a perfect marriage. There's problems with The Crow. Ernie Hudson shouldn't smoke a cigarette on camera because it's obvious he doesn't smoke and he's making a fool of himself. That's a problem.
I watched that scene a couple days ago. It's funny.
Yeah. They call it graffiti. He's holding it like a joint. Dude, it's a cigarette, bro. Chill.
Yeah.
Some dialogue is cheesy. I guess I'll use your front door next time. Chill. But overall, I think the soul of that film, the heart of that film, and the way it's communicated, because at the end of the day, filmmaking is a audio-visual medium. The way the emotion is communicated in audio visual way, I think is a stroke of fucking genius. And that's why we're still talking about The Crow right now, because that movie was ahead of its time, in my opinion. So that's one that really marked me. You want more titles?
Sure.
Waxwork. I always had a pure love for that film. It's just a great horror party movie. With his heart on his sleeve, obviously it has an affinity for, old school horror filmmaking, with the wax figures and the old school monsters. But I always like Waxwork a lot. Yeah, that's a good one.
It's interesting that, so for The Crow, you mentioned having its heart and its soul, and here you just mentioned heart on its sleeve. Is there something about that is important?
Yeah, when you watch a film, and I don't see it as much today because filmmaking today has become more like a corporation, more like products. I mean, not to say there wasn't any. It's funny, what was considered products in the 80s and 90s feels like heartfelt today, because now it really is product. Like Return of the Jedi, which is not my favorite Star Wars film by any means, has a lot of problems. but you feel the heart coming through it. And then take Rise of the Skywalker, I think it was called Rise of Skywalker or some shit, the last like big Star Wars movie by J.J. Abrams, and it feels like an assembly line product. Corporation now, in terms of the big movie, remember like the blockbusters, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., there's heart in those movies. But today's blockbusters, there's no heart because there's no room for it. There's too many suits with their hands in the pie. And that's just how it is.
People making it.
Exactly.
That's it.
I mean, other than, George potentially, but, it's not being made by an indie studio now. Now it's being made by Disney. So
yeah, a corporation. And everybody makes the same mistake. It's a bit like the Weinsteins. Have you guys seen The Crow, City of Angels? It's the second Crow with Vincent Perez.
I have not.
Nah,
Okay, you watch that movie and you watch interviews with Tim Pope, who's the director. He was a music video director, did a lot of the Cure music videos.
Okay.
And, so the Weinsteins hired this guy because he knows his shit. He's talented. He's done a bunch of music videos for the Cure. Let's hire this guy to make this movie. And then he makes the movie. And then the Weinsteins come in and say, oh, no, you're wrong. We're going to recut the entire fucking movie to fit what we think is right. But the problem is Mr. Harvey Weinstein, and I forgot the other fucking Weinstein's name, Bob? George? I don't know. One of those things.
one of those.
You hired an artist because you respected his art. You yourself on your end are not artists. So why are you now thinking you're going to dictate what the movie should be?
They do that a lot.
I know.
A lot.
And
That's what happened with the Thing reboot / prequel, isn't it?
Yeah, same thing happened.
Like it was totally practical, and then I believe it was the Weinsteins came in. They're like, no, the kids like CGI these days. Let's add a lot of that.
No, I don't remember if it was the Weinsteins in that particular case, but I do remember that is what happened, is that everything that was practical got CG enhanced or CG replaced. So the Thing, I call it a pre-make because it's a prequel and it's a remake.
Remake. Okay.
Yeah, a pre-make, yeah. Yeah, whatever. I won't remember it in about 2 days. That's it. There's no heart anymore in big budget filmmaking. Even, take Raiders of the Lost Ark versus Dial of Destiny.
Yeah.
I think it was called, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Actually, I don't need to say anything more.
No, you don't. That's self-explanatory right there. I think, just picture these two next to each other.
Exactly.
There you go.
Which is a shame. It's a shame because Indiana Jones is probably one of my favorite film characters. Right in the trilogy, up to Last Crusade, they're genius. They're classics, and there's heart. There's soul. Now there's no heart and there's no soul in anything. Not like across the board. Obviously, I'm generalizing to make a point, but it's not the norm anymore. It's an exception.
There's some good gems out there.
Yeah, there are, but you gotta find them.
Yeah.
Because
I can't. Yeah. Go ahead. You're gonna say something.
No, I was done. I corrected myself. It's okay.
You've probably heard it before. I can't think of the exact quote, but it was something about Mel Brooks. I can't even remember what movie it was, but there was they came and showed the producers some dailies or something like that. The producers or whoever was bankrolling it tried to, give him some feedback, and he cut him off immediately. And he basically said, don't mistake this conversation. We are not accepting input from uncouth heathens. We are doing this. We just are showing you what we're doing. I'll have to find that quote, send it to you if you don't know what that one was. So for adult years, again, pairs of questions here. Start with the negative so we can end on the positive. Do you remember the last person you hurt?
Oh, man. Really, dude? Okay. The last person I hurt.
You don't have to answer it. We're just,
I know.
It's still an option.
Yeah, I guess, ex-girlfriends, I've hurt people that maybe didn't deserve to be hurt. Yeah. But, it's the old, well, I don't know if it's an old saying, but it's my saying. You cannot love other people properly if you don't love yourself properly first.
Right.
Mm.
So if you go through a very difficult childhood and you learn to love yourself properly in your 30s, you're going to make a lot of fuck ups. But,
very true.
Yeah.
Do you remember the last person you helped?
I've been helping people a lot for a long period of time, to be honest. A lot of people that have reached out to me because of Arrow in the Head or because of Saw or The Shelter or whatever. What I've always done is that when people love my work and reach out to me, I always respond. And a lot of my friends today, some of my best friends, start off as fans. And we just, they would email me, I love this, I love that, and whether it be like Arrow in the Head, whether it be a film or an acting thing. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. Let's keep in touch. Oh, I'll be in Spain on X next date, and the fan is from Spain. Oh, let's have a beer. And then I meet up with them, and we have a beer, and then we share, and then they become brothers. Right. So I've always had a very open mind, like I always felt blessed that people actually gave a fuck what I did. And if they did, and and if there's a connection, then then we become friends. It's never been like oh, I do this and I'm here and you do that and I'm there. It's always been, hey man, if we connect as human beings, let's connect. And so no, I've helped a lot of people because I believe, for me, in terms of my own value system, it's if you're in a position to be able to help people, then you should.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what you do for a living or what the outside perception of you is, oh, this guy's wasn't, I'll use Sawtooth as an example. The guy was a Sawtooth. No, we're all human beings. We all, born, we're all going to die. And for me, I never let any, yo, I've been to Playboy parties, this, that. It doesn't make me any better than anybody, We're all human beings and we're all on the same fucking path. And that's it. Yeah.
It's funny that you say that because I've talked to Chris about this in the last couple months. So sort of the three goals of our podcast. The first one, obviously, fans of your work can hear you come talk about things that maybe you haven't shared elsewhere. The medium term goal is we don't shy away from difficult topics. And if they do come up, we try to talk about them in healthy, respectful manners. And, hopefully our guests will get something out of that because maybe they're in a situation where they need to hear that. And then the long-term goal is if we talk to enough people, then maybe we'll learn something about the horror community as a whole that we can then kind of hand back to the mainstream world and say, here's some interesting information. And to that third point, not everybody's going to fall into the same bucket, but how many buckets are there? Which one are the most common? Which ones are the less common? And within the last couple months, I've been starting to kind of realize what you're just saying there about it almost doesn't even matter what bucket anybody falls into. The underlying comment is we're all human. We all have whatever. It doesn't matter what you fear or love is to oppose to this other person. The point is we both still love things and both fear things and hate things and have, the general emotions and experiences. So
I agree.
And the real point is to find out what motherfucker put us all in this stupid bucket.
That's a bigger question.
Yeah, these are the big questions.
Yes. Let's see. So, scary dreams as an adult, those still coming back? You still having the sleep paralysis stuff?
No, that went away. I'll share this. It'll be interesting. I would say, I'm in my 40s now. When I was in, I would say maybe late 30s, it started to come back. And I saw a movie. I don't know if it was the movie. No, I read a book. Called, well, they renamed it Deliver Us from Evil, which they made a movie with Eric Bana, which is based on a real cop, NYPD cop named Ralph Sarchi, who moonlighted as a Brooklyn cop in the day, and at night he was an exorcism.
Okay.
And he became, kind of like, I read his book is like completely, whether you're a man of faith or not, or you believe in this or that or whatever, read his book. And his book is basically, he opens up a window to a world that I didn't think existed. And then it's up to you to believe if you believe in it or not. But, Ralph Sarchi kind of became hot enough for Scott Derrickson to make a movie about his life called Deliver Us from Evil. And in my grown-up days, I did have like supernatural shit coming back to fuck with me. And I'd read Ralph's book. I reached out to him and we got on the phone and we talked about it. And I'm telling him what my problems are and he gave me advice. And I applied his advice, and the problems ended. And from that day forward, since I spoke to Mr. Sarchi, I have not had any problems.
Are you comfortable sharing what the advice was?
No.
Okay.
No, because it's a religious thing. It's a religious thing, and some people are atheists, some people are this, some people are Buddhists, some people are Muslims, which is all fine. So I don't want to pinpoint I don't want to shine a light on my advice, which is all Catholic Christian based. But the bottom line is his advice worked, and that's all I needed. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. You did bring up something earlier that I thought was interesting. You had mentioned having this sleep paralysis and that there are these entities that were coming and talking to you. And that was an interesting element because I don't think I've ever heard anybody, we've talked about sleep paralysis in the past, but we've never had a case where there was communication.
Oh yeah, big time. I'll give you two of them top of my head. One of them was, it was always the same process. So you're laying in bed, you're half asleep, half not. Your body freezes up. The only thing that can move are your eyeballs. And then, a figure shows up in the corner of the room. In this particular story, it was a woman that showed up in the doorway. And she had a hood on top of her head and everything. And she came right up to me and whispered in my ear, "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay." And then she dropped these droplets of water on my arm. And then, she left. And then once she left, I unfroze and everything. And my arm was wet from the water.
Interesting.
So that's one. That's one. The other one, actually, this one you're going to like. I was seeing this girl, and one night I had the sleep paralysis thing and everything, and the usual structure, freeze up, only your eyeballs. And she showed up in the doorway, and she rushed. Oh yeah, my girlfriend. Yeah. Well, wait. Okay. Wait till you hear the ending. So, and she rushed towards me like a raging bull. So it was very frightening, and started jumping on top of me and somewhat mimicking a sexual act. So whatever, and then she fucked off, and I unsnapped, so basically I couldn't move again and everything like that. Next day I found out she killed herself.
Oh, the very same day, like around the same time of day? The
same day, the next day after I have the sleep paralysis, let's call it a dream, just for people, quote unquote dream of her, my body freezes up, she comes, simulates, sexual act on me, and then fucks off. And then the next day I find out that night that I had the sleep paralysis, she killed herself with pills.
Well, it's not creepy at all.
No, not at all. And our relationship was purely sexual. Hence, the way she went about it in quote unquote ghost form. That's the way I call it. But like I said, I personally do not give a flying twinkle of a fuck what people think about, do I have a ghost, this, that, stupid, blah, 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 whatever. I've seen enough things to know what I believe in, and I'm very confident and secure in that. And, if you don't want to believe, that's fine too. I don't care. But I've seen enough shit. I believe in ghosts big time. Big time. Yeah.
You mentioned that things started turning around for you around in your 20s. So as an adult then, have you had any experiences where you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
I guess very little snippets here and there. No, it's funny, one of my best friends, he's always busting my chops. Still to this day, he says, "John, you always compare life to war." I wake up in the morning, text my friend, "Bro, wartime, let's go to war." And he's like, "Why do you always compare life to war?" I go, "Because so far in my life, that's all it's been. It's been war. Everything's a fight. You want to achieve something professionally, it's a fight. You're not doing well psychologically, emotionally, and you want to fix yourself, that's a fight. You have a romantic relationship, and you have personality conflicts, if you will, that's a fight. So no, actually, you know what, dude? No. Of course, I've had little moments here and there. I'm sitting by a lake by myself, watching the birds fly. Yeah, I'm at peace. Or I go, I'm a big guy, hiking guy. I love hiking. I love climbing mountains. When I go in nature by myself and just hear the silence and hear the animals, and I'm at peace. But overall, in terms of my involvement in our society, no, everything's a war, and it's still a war. And I anticipate it will be a war until the day I die. But I made peace with that. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always a battle.
Yeah.
It's always, not necessarily a struggle, but a battle, just
A battle.
If you want thing, you have to do thing.
I made that movie Malicious, plug, wink, wink. You think that was in a war to get it off the ground, to get it in the bag, and then to go through post-production with investors who know nothing about the creative process, telling you what you should or should not do, blah, blah. You think that was easy? I was losing my fucking mind. Then, the movie was born, and in complete honesty, when the movie was born and was finished, I wrote it off because it was not the movie I wanted to make because there was too much interference from the people that had leverage on me because of financial reasons. But then I saw it with a crowd in Beverly Hills. I had my premiere in Beverly Hills. I saw it with a crowd, and I saw the reaction of the crowd. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I do have something, and I could stand behind it. So now I stand behind it. But for a long time, after a year of fighting, just to do what I feel is right, I'm the artist. You hired me as the artist because you think, oh, the artist knows what he's doing. But then, you're the money guy, and you're going to come and fucking tell me what I should do artistically, which is wrong. So it's kind of like a very mini version of what the Weinsteins have been doing, the filmmakers forever. No, it's very difficult. It was a war. I had a lot of stress and, losing my shit and losing my temper. And so, yeah, in my life anyways, I don't know about you guys, life is war.
Yeah. Can be.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I think that is pretty much what you get after a certain age or even a certain stage in your life is the calm, blissful moments you get are like 5 to 15 minutes at most, like when you're out on a hike in a nice park. Like, this was good. Yeah. Okay, back to the war.
Exactly.
Take a break.
Yeah.
So the next two questions are not just related to horror, and they're not just any one time of your life. It's any genre and over your entire life. First question is, what movie would you say you've watched more times than any other?
Rambo First Blood Part 2.
Okay.
Had that one on deck. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. That's, they have that question, if you go to a deserted island, what album would you bring? What movie would you bring? And for me, it would be Rambo First Blood Part 2 in terms of film anyways. Yeah.
Why that one?
It makes me happy. It's a movie that marked me really early on. Everything about it, from the visuals, very comic booky. It's a bit like the 80s. Like in the 60s and 70s, they had Tarzan, and in the 80s, we had Rambo, shirtless guy through the jungle, saving the day. And Rambo First Blood Part 2, from the Jerry Goldsmith score, Stallone, really announcing himself as a megastar with that movie. He was, in better shape than most bodybuilders at that time. And it's just a rousing, fun, no holds barred adventure. So it makes me smile. When I get sick with the flu or get COVID and I'm in bed, with my soup, I'll watch Rambo First Blood Part 2 or Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it makes me incredibly happy.
Okay. And then the next question would be, and it may be the same answer, maybe not, but if you had your feet held to the fire and had to pick a favorite movie, would it be the same movie or a different movie?
No, it'd probably still be. I mean, look, for me, Stallone stuff. Rocky 3, Rambo 2. These are all movies that mean a lot to me. Rocky 4 to some degree.
Okay.
Transformers, the movie. 1986.
Yeah.
I
was just about to ask.
Yeah. No, but Rambo 2 is really the movie that, in terms of all the line of questioning that you're asking me, Rambo 2 is my safe answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going back to horror for a minute, do you see any common threads about what kind of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical?
I don't like cannibalism much. I like religious horror a lot, actually. Like The Exorcist, The Omen. More recently, The Pope's Exorcist, even though it was a bit Big Mac-ish. Russell Crowe really carried that movie like a champion. I thought he was very affable, very likable, and I'll watch another one just because of his performance. He was so good. The movie around him was okay, kind of generic. Religious horror, I think, is I have like an utmost fascination with Christianity, with Christian history, with
Okay.
the Knights
It's not
Templars.
so much a horror, but have you seen? It's more of a thriller. A Dark Song.
No, I did not actually.
It's interesting. It's got like an occult but still religious vibe to it. It's essentially about a woman who is attempting to summon
an angel.
communion with an angel.
Oh, like
To
2016.
grant her
I'm
a wish.
seeing. All right, I'll definitely check it out. Yeah, no, I mean, come on, Christianity has been around for what, 2,000 years? I mean, it's still enduring.
About
Some people are saying it's a crock. Some people are saying it was real but manipulated, by the powers that be to control the people better.
Yeah.
Blah 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 blah. But last I checked, Jesus Christ is still one of the most popular dudes in the world 2,000 years later. And for me, I am fascinated by uncovering the truth. So it's a passion of mine to read up, on stuff, and just figure shit out for myself. Yeah.
I've also seen that one, and I enjoyed it. I'll put it this way. For lack of a better way to say it, it doesn't go into the quote unquote lore, shall we say, of religion, but there's definitely some interesting stuff about it. And
it's convincing. It is that.
I like the visuals too. There's certain things about the visuals I really liked. So this is the point where we might summarize some of the common themes that have been coming up. But before we get to that, do you think that there's anything relevant to the conversation about what you like about horror that maybe you didn't get a chance to say, or we didn't ask about, or maybe you thought of something and then the conversation took a left turn?
Well, I think, horror is a popular subgenre because it's very, how can I say this? It's very wide. It's very broad. I mean, you take let's say like a movie like The Fly with Jeff Goldblum by Cronenberg, and it could be used as a metaphor for a bunch of things like AIDS or, any disease. I think the horror genre is really cool because you could use a bit like sci-fi. Sci-fi does that as well, but you could use a supernatural story and it could act as a analogy to something that's very current and social, which I really like. It's also a genre where you can really experiment and try different things. That's why, a lot of our bigger filmmakers, like your Peter Jacksons, your Oliver Stones, they started off in the horror genre. David Cronenberg, obviously, they started off in the horror genre because it's a genre that gives artists, before they wind up with like a Weinstein up their ass, but that gives an artist a landscape where they could experiment and try different things. There's that freedom that comes with the horror genre, and obviously, it is cathartic, whether people want to admit it or not. Like for me, why do I enjoy Friday 13 part? I don't know, 4, let's say, because I know it's like a Big Mac. It's a comfort food. I know exactly what I'm getting. I'm going to get titties, I'm going to get booties, and I'm going to get a lot of gore and blood, and there's going to be a girl who's going to survive at the end. She'll kill him, but then he'll come back for the next one. So
sometimes there's a girl at the beginning who does survive because it's all a trap set by the FBI or the CIA or whatever.
Yeah, Jason Goes to Hell. Yeah, that happened once. So, they poke fun at the trope, but, not to segue too much, but it's not too hard to really make a good Friday 13 movie. All you kind of have to do is, as opposed to the Platinum Duel remake, which had its moments, don't get me wrong, but make it clip pace, so 85 minutes, 90 minutes, put in a lot of nudity, make it smutty, almost borderline softcore, put dudes in there too, equal opportunity for the ladies and the gay dudes, I don't give a fuck. And make it very gory with a lot of practical effects, idealistically, and you're good to go. Yeah, it's a very simple
recipe
formula. Yeah, but for some reason they're having a hard time nailing it. But anyways, I digress.
So if we were to summarize the stuff that have come up on the call multiple times, I think really the 4 words that I would pick would be strength, power, control, and catharsis.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I'll go with that.
That's kind of been the through line from the whole thing. Like Evil Dead was the first time you mentioned catharsis, and that was the first thing you said, and then you just brought up catharsis like seconds ago.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Rocky. It's these elements of finding your own strength and finding your own control in a situation, and getting through it.
I'll go with it. I'll go with it.
Do you think there's something more that you would add to that, or?
No, not really. No.
Okay. Normally, the follow-up question would be, why do you like those things? I think that's kind of evident in your case. And the funny thing about that then is the next question after that is, why horror? Couldn't you explore that in other genres? And you actually kind of already touched on that too, and what you said a minute ago, that you do get to explore some of the same stuff, for example, in sci-fi, but with horror, you get a lot more room to explore and to experiment, because in terms of the genre, it seems to be much more
mixable.
Well,
it lends itself for collaboration much easier than other genres.
It seems like the genre that... Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it seems like compared to other genres, it's the one genre where this is the playground.
I think horror has just more creative wiggle room. If you take like a film, which I didn't truly care for, I like the first two acts, not particularly the last act, but Hereditary, it's a film that, went far with its ideas and its thematics and the way it, communicated them, on a physical level or whatnot. I think the horror genre, even more so than sci-fi, has more wiggle room in terms of how far you can go to express, whatever social commentary you want to put down or thematics or whatnot.
Yeah, I think the sci-fi audience, they have that more. The one restriction is that they often want it to be realistic scientifically, where obviously that doesn't necessarily need to be the case in a lot of the different subgenres of horror. Because
exactly.
Sir, have you seen a sci-fi original production?
Like
realistic?
Anyway. Like the Sci-Fi Channel you're talking about?
Yeah. He's being sarcastic.
Oh, okay. No, not really. No. I'm pretty sure I did some piece of shit somewhere, but yeah.
He was making the joke about like reality shows aren't realistic.
They're not. No. They're sitcoms dressed up as reality. Yeah.
Wait, they're scripted? Well, I mean, next thing you'll say is that wrestling isn't real.
Oh no, wrestling is real, bro. What are you talking about?
Wrestling is real.
Yeah. I have young kids. It's real.
Yes. Yeah. That is a real thing.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we came up with a pretty good understanding of where you fit into the picture, in terms of, like we were saying earlier, like a third goal of trying to understand, what are the different buckets and who falls into what, and try to get some numbers there. And like we said earlier before, we have started to identify some trends, and the one that you brought up is not uncommon. As a matter of fact, I would say it's probably the most common. There's a lot of different reasons have come up, but the one that does seem to be coming up the most often has to do with, power and finding your own control in life, which is completely understandable. It's something that we all deal with.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're like I've said before, we are not in control in terms of what life piles on top of us. Actually, let me rephrase that. We're kind of like born as a piece of clay, and then life chips away at us. But at a certain point, it's up to us to fill out the holes and fix the cracks and pile on the clay we want to pile on. So at a certain point, to everybody listening, no matter how difficult your upbringing was, there comes a point where it is up to you. So be, self-aware of that and take charge of your life, because, last I checked, the clock's ticking. So at some point it ends. So
yeah, we'll get together with you offline to put together a bio page for you and link to whatever it is that you want to link to. On our way out, you want to mention it was Malignant. I think it was not Malignant. It was
Malicious.
Malignant is James Wan. Yeah.
Yes. I knew something was off about that. So you said it's on all the. It's currently on streaming platforms? Or?
It's on Tubi, it's on Amazon, it's on iTunes, it's on Google Play, it's on Roku. It's like everywhere but Netflix. There you go. That's where it's at.
All right.
Okay.
Cool. Well, like I said, we'll put together a bio page for you, and if they want to link to your socials or whatever, link to Joe Blow and stuff like that too.
I'll send you everything you need. No worries.
Cool. So
Awesome.
thank you, and thank you to everybody out there listening. Please do come visit us at horrormakesushappy.com. We'll have his bio page there and a couple other things, and support us if you can. And if nothing else, tell a friend.